Zephyr's third perk is called the Silver Key, which allows the holder to deposit and withdraw items from the Room of Silvers. It grants access to a forgotten castle room, and is currently equipped on Zephyr's left hand. In other words, it functions more like a subspace artifact. He withdrew a dragon soul plant and a piece of cloth from his subspace artifact, and instructing the party leader to stand back because things would get rough. Zephyr tied his hand to the spear using the cloth. Upon witnessing what Zephyr did, the leader couldn't help but ask him what he was planning to do, as he knew that Zephyr was not even a combatant. In the leader's thoughts, he was determined not to die an embarrassing death behind a miner, even if it meant sacrificing himself. In the midst of his thinking, the predator unleashed a skill called Fear, causing the targets to be paralyzed with terror. This reminded him of a story that he had heard from his senior years ago. It was a chilling tale of an adult predator attacking a nearby village, leaving the helpless villagers unable to even blink their eyes. As they witnessed the gruesome massacre, paralyzed with fear, they were defenseless, waiting helplessly for their turn to be devoured by the predator. However, he was shocked by what he witnessed. Zephyr stood his ground and deflected the attacks coming from the predator he had feared so much. Zephyr remained unexpectedly calm in the face of the predator's fear-inducing skill. This composure was thanks to the Dragon Soul, a natural tonic known for its calming properties. Additionally, Zephyr utilized his second perk, Hermes Vision, which enhanced the effects of any medical items by up to 500%. Among the 9 perks Zephyr possessed, only one was a weapon, but it required a substantial amount of magical power to use, rendering it unusable at the moment. Nevertheless, the item he will summon was more than enough to face a predator that had not yet reached adulthood. Simultaneously, he summoned an item known as the Venom King's Fate, specifically the 72nd Venom, Burial number 68, and applied it to the tip of his spear. This poison was crafted by his friend named Fate in the past. During their final conversation, Zephyr asked if it was alright to share the recipes Fate had spent a lifetime perfecting. Fate replied gently, stating that there was no point in hiding it when the world had fallen. It would be better if everyone could use it, instead of keeping it a secret. However, in Fate's thoughts, it would be even better if Zephyr used it. If his poison could eliminate one more piece of trash and save one more person, Fate couldn't ask for anything more. Zephyr successfully wounded the predator. Using the spear coated with Fate's poison, the predator let out a fierce roar, indicating that it had been harmed by the venom. The venom that is known as lethal venom burial was concocted using common herbs and had the ability to infiltrate the bloodstream, corroding the organs of its victim. In addition, it inflicted excruciating pain. As Fate, known as the Venom King, had a sadistic nature, it would take approximately 3 minutes for the venom to spread throughout the predator's body. Zephyr had to ensure his own survival until that time elapsed, while he was buying time by evading the predator's attacks. Zephyr also seized every opportunity to stab it. However, the predator unleashed a powerful tail attack, but fortunately, Zephyr managed to block it. Nonetheless, the force of the impact sent him flying, and he collided with the wall. The predator quickly pursued him and was intending to devour him whole. However, Zephyr had anticipated this scenario and swiftly threw an entire bottle of poison directly into the predator's mouth, and then evaded to the side of the predator. Zephyr could see the predator writhing in agony, indicating that it had only 1 minute left to live due to the excruciating pain caused by swallowing the venom. In Zephyr's mind, considering his current abilities, it was challenging for him to outrun the predator. He only had 2 options. It's either wait until it dies in a minute or execute a finishing blow. Zephyr began to grasp the predator's tail, causing it to become even more frantic. However, Zephyr was merely biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to deliver his final strikes to the predator. He then leaped directly onto the back of the predator's head and swiftly stabbed it with the poisoned spear. The predator, in a state of panic, launched a tail attack at Zephyr in an attempt to shake him off. As a result of the attack, Zephyr's spear was broken. Undeterred, he grabbed the broken spear and struck one more blow against the predator. But then Zephyr didn't hesitate to follow it up with another strike using the knife he had on his back. The predator's movements became unpredictable as it experienced both pain and panic once again. Zephyr continued to hold on to the knife, lodged in the back of the predator's head. Knowing it wasn't enough and desiring to deliver one more decisive blow, in his contemplation, now that he had returned 10 years into the past, Zephyr realized that his strength, body, and everything else can't surpass that of the predator. That's why he had made those preparations, which slightly enhanced his magic power, with the intention of defeating the predator. Zephyr utilized a straightforward magic power technique, known as discharge. With this technique, he managed to pierce through the predator's tough skull, effectively defeating the predator. Meanwhile, on the sidelines, the leader observed everything that had transpired and came to a profound realization. He understood that he had misunderstood Zephyr all along. Even if Zephyr hadn't demonstrated his valor and earned his admiration, his true worth would have been swiftly recognized, and he would have progressed far beyond his current status. However, at present, Zephyr remained nothing more than a mere miner, who can't even enter a dungeon. He needs a ticket, which in a form of himself. While the leader was lost in his contemplation, Zephyr approached him with a determined expression, indicating that they needed to have a conversation. Meanwhile, in another part of the continent, a series of killings like the one described were taking place. One particular individual found himself pleading for his life, desperately explaining to his attacker that it was all a misunderstanding. He insisted that they were colleagues who had entered the dungeon together and that he was not a devil worshipper. Despite his pleas, Sahaku, the man in charge, ordered his execution. A bulky figure swung his weapon, crushing the victim's skull. As the lifeless bodies fell, something unexpected emerged from their mouth, and it was an insect-like creature. Sahaku immediately recognized it as a parasitic centipede, and swiftly struck it with his sword, causing it to explode. This confirmed their suspicion that the men they had killed were indeed devil worshippers. In his pursuit of a single worm, Sahaku ended up slaughtering 7 members, and Matthias, the examiner, questioned Sahaku about the low probability of finding the target in such a manner. He further inquired whether it was justifiable to burn down the entire house to catch one bug, referring to the severity of their actions. Sahaku responded by emphasizing their understanding of how these individuals operate, explaining that they must assume the rest of the members have already been infected. He added that there was only 1 month until the raid, and if they didn't eradicate the heretics from the temple promptly, it would undoubtedly result in a significant cost. The examiner assured Sahaku that he would handle the complaints from the hunting team on his behalf. However, he emphasized that in return, Sahaku needed to deliver results and not act impulsively. As a member of the Department of Heresy Investigators, Sahaku smiled in acknowledgement and accepted the orders. Meanwhile, in the Department of Human Resources, the staff requested that team leader, Goth of Reconnaissance Team D, fill out the request form first. They asked for the nominee's name and department. Goth promptly replied that the nominee was Zephyr from the mining department, who had been recruited a week prior to that day. The HR staff then explained that if a team leader was nominating a member from another department, the nominee would be placed under the team leader's team. They also mentioned that if the nominee made any errors during their performance, it would lower the performance rating of the team. The staff asked if Goth agreed to these terms. Goth, the team leader, replied affirmatively, stating that he agreed. In the leader's thoughts, he was clearly inclined to agree because if Zephyr performed well, it would also reflect positively on him. He couldn't help but acknowledge that life was often a matter of luck, and he couldn't believe that such a fortunate opportunity had come his way. In the dungeon a day before that date, the leader asked Zephyr if he was suggesting they pretend that the predator didn't exist. Zephyr said yes. The leader then inquired about Zephyr's plan for disposing of the monster's body. Zephyr replied that obtaining the predator's body was his primary objective, and suggested leaving the kobolds' bodies untouched. And he proposed that they report the incident as a kobold lair instead. Anything that comes out of the dungeon, such as the monster's corpse, magic stones, and items, cannot be obtained by the temple slaves. Any item acquired by a slave automatically becomes the property of the temple. The only benefit that these combat slaves receive from hunting is in the form of bonuses, which are based on clearing rewards and the value of the loot. Zephyr then told the leader that if they handed the predator's body over to the brokers, they could earn a significantly larger sum. The leader argued that it was impossible, since the surveillance team outside was solely responsible for that task. Even if they managed to succeed, the post-processing team would arrive to confirm and retrieve all the loot. However, Zephyr flashed a menacing smile and posed a question. What if he can do it? He proceeded to deposit the Predator's body into his subspace, which was equipped on his left hand. The leader was stunned by what he witnessed. He believed that subspace magic was only capable of storing a few inventory items, and yet that gigantic monster disappeared without a trace along with the blood surrounding it. Zephyr suddenly called out the leader's name and asked him if he wanted to be promoted. Zephyr's condition was that he would let the leader advance 3 more dungeons and receive the clearing rewards. That in return, Zephyr would claim the monsters in the leader's thoughts. Quarterly dungeon clears, especially the number of battles, significantly influenced the promotional exams, even if it was a low-level dungeon like the Cobalt Lair. As a patrolling team, they lacked battles. The leader had been a team leader for 3 years already. However, it would be a different story if they acquired an overpowered member like Zephyr. The patrol team was the first to enter the dungeon, having it all to themselves, without any interference. If they could clear the dungeon with just a few members of his team, his rank as a team leader would rise as well. What the team leader desired was promotion. While Zephyr wanted money, it was a favorable trade, as long as they remained cautious not to get caught. Meanwhile, in Zephyr's thoughts, he realized that he would be able to pay off his debts as long as the Predator sold at a good price. His plan was to leave the temple as soon as possible. However, before that could happen, there was something he needed to do. The Great Raid with the Temple Knights was scheduled to take place within the next month. It was during this raid that they would discover an item that would cause a massive upheaval across the continent. Zephyr knew that he must participate in that raid no matter what, and obtain the item in order to change the future. The registration process was now complete, and from that day onward, Zephyr was officially a member of the hunting team. They provided him with an ID tag and instructed him to ensure that he collected the essential equipment from the supply depot. While the leader and Zephyr were walking down the streets, Zephyr found himself lost in thoughts about his past. He was enlisted in the hunting team after the participant list for the raid had been announced, resulting him couldn't participate directly. The hunting team could only bring a maximum of 20 members. So Zephyr knew he had to achieve something remarkable or establish valuable connections to secure a spot in that party. Fortunately, he already had a plan in mind, and it was just a matter of deciding when to put it into action. Goth then proceeded to explain to Zephyr that the building where the people were lined up was the supply depot on the first floor. The leader wanted to visit the infirmary and check on Dale and Marco to ensure they received proper treatment. In the midst of their conversation, Goth noticed Sahaku's party approaching and quickly advised Zephyr to lower his head as a sign of respect. However, as Sahaku's and his members passed by, Sahaku felt something unsettling from Zephyr. With a look of relief on his face, Goth informed him that Sahaku's party was part of the Heresy Examiner's team and should be treated with utmost respect. They held higher ranks than regular slaves and were notorious for disregarding procedures and attacking people without reason. Even those who hadn't greeted them, or accidental bystanders who bumped into them, were taken away. Sahaku, known as Mad Dog, was particularly dangerous. He joined the Examiner's team solely to indulge in killing people, and once he set his sights on a target, he would not let go. Goth warned Zephyr to be cautious and stay on guard. However, to Goth's surprise, Sahaku called out to Zephyr. Goth couldn't help but wonder if Sahaku overheard their conversation. Sahaku approached them and expressed that something was bothering him. He pointed out Zephyr, the one dressed like a miner, and introduced himself as Sahaku of the Heresy Examiners. He commanded Zephyr to disclose his name and department. Before Goth could finish explaining that Zephyr had just been transferred to his team, he was abruptly interrupted. Sahaku silenced Goth, asserting that nobody asked him to speak, and emanating a strong and menacing aura. Goth was left stunned by the overwhelming display of Sahaku's murderous intent. Sahaku's heightened senses allowed him to notice even the slightest details, leaving no room for errors. While others might not have detected anything unusual, Sahaku's keen perception quickly led him to deduce that Zephyr was a high-level expert. The fact that Zephyr, dressed as a miner, had been transferred from the mining team to the hunting team indicated that he had originally belonged to the mining team. In the temple, all new slaves underwent performance tests to assess their strength and magic abilities. Before being assigned to a specific department, these tests provided an opportunity for them to showcase their skills in battles for the hunting team, as the team was constantly in need of new recruits. However, it was highly unusual for a high-level expert like Zephyr to have been on the mining team and then nominated for the hunting team. Sahaku sensed that something was inherently unnatural about this situation. They swiftly surrounded Zephyr, and Sahaku wore a smile as he contemplated the situation. While Zephyr was indeed a high-ranking expert, Sahaku believed they were still capable of capturing him. Sahaku then addressed Zephyr, informing him that he would be asking questions and expected honest and composed answers. In Zephyr's mind, he wondered about the intentions of this individual and questioned why he had come forward. He sarcastically remarked to himself, how kind of him to crawl out of his hole. Sahaku had a few questions for Zephyr, and instructed him to answer honestly and calmly, without any lies. With the examiner's party surrounding Zephyr, Sahaku began his questioning. He first asked Zephyr if he had ever heard of the demon god worshippers. When it came to the demon god worshippers, there was no one who knew them better than Zephyr. They were a group of believers who worshipped the demon god Tartaros. These individuals were the ones who would lead many people to their destruction in the upcoming battle for survival, and betraying humanity in the process. Currently, the lower-ranked members should be aware that the demon god worshippers are a newly established opposition religion that is in conflict with the existing order. Sahaku continued, stating that there are several distinct characteristics that set the demon god worshippers apart from most other individuals. Sahaku, renowned for his ability to detect subtle differences, chose to work under Lord Marcius of the Heretics Inquisitors. He expressed his intuition that Zephyr posed a threat, and aimed his sword at him, emphasizing that from that moment onward, Zephyr must truthfully respond to all of Sahaku's questions as a member of the Heretic Inquisitors. Sahaku cautioned Zephyr that everything he says and does can and will be used against him, urging him to keep that in mind before providing any answers. However, Zephyr responded by asking for a favor from Sahaku and the others. This remark upset the other members, but Sahaku intervened and allowed Zephyr to continue. Zephyr requested that they relocate to another area. Sahaku swiftly inquired if there was something wrong with their current location. Zephyr simply explained that there were too many people paying attention to them, and expressed concern about the possibility of witnessing something unfortunate. He then expressed his hope that Sahaku would continue to uphold his honor as a member of the Heretic Inquisitors. This remark angered Sahaku, who detected Zephyr's overflowing confidence. Sahaku questioned whether Zephyr was suggesting that he could handle all 5 of them on his own. However, Sahaku decided it was fine, as encountering individuals like Zephyr only fueled his pride in his work. They proceeded to cast a buff skill called Red Field, which enhanced the abilities of allies within its range. The duration and effectiveness of the skill is increased with the number of users. Witnessing this, Zephyr couldn't help but anticipate that things were about to become even more interesting. He decided to adopt a previously unseen battle stance, preparing himself for their attacks. In Sahaku's eyes, it was the first time he had witnessed such a martial arts stance, causing him to question whether he should weigh and assess the situation, as most people would do. However, Sahaku was confident in his superiority when within the red field, and swiftly launched an attack towards Zephyr. Sahaku utilized acceleration, relentlessly striking at Zephyr. To Sahaku's surprise, Zephyr managed to dodge and deflect all of his attacks using his unique martial arts style. Seizing the opportunity, Zephyr counterattacked and was aiming a strike towards Sahaku's head. However, Sahaku evaded the attack and retaliated with a kick aimed at Zephyr's legs. To his astonishment, Sahaku found that his kick had no effect on Zephyr, as if he had kicked a solid steel pipe. This created an opening for Zephyr, who proceeded to unleash a series of punches, knocking Sahaku to the ground. Thankfully, Goth warned Zephyr of an incoming attack from his right, allowing Zephyr to block the strike coming from the bulky member of the Heretic Inquisitors. The man taunted Zephyr Stating that it was now his turn to play with him, Zephyr coolly responded, suggesting that the man should learn to communicate with others, as they might perceive him as nothing more than a pet being raised. Enraged by Zephyr's words, the man launched a massive attack with the weapon he carried towards Zephyr. Fortunately, Zephyr managed to dodge the attack, causing the ground to crumble and rocks to scatter towards the bystanders. In Gotha's opinion, Zephyr was a formidable and intimidating man due to his actions, although the bulky man swung his morning star flail, shattering the ground and sending fragments towards Zephyr, but he effortlessly blocked every strike. Because of this, Goth couldn't help but contemplate the potential outcome if Zephyr were to emerge victorious from this fight. If Sahaku were to be defeated in such a manner, he would be both infuriated and embarrassed, making it impossible for him to report to the higher-ranking officers and request an official warrant against Zephyr. If Zephyr were to win, there would be no need for further questioning, and they could simply depart. Goth found himself silently rooting for Zephyr from the sidelines, as he knew that if Zephyr were to lose, he too would be arrested for assisting him. However, to Gotha's surprise, a random bystander commented that it was an unfortunate situation for Zephyr. Curious, Goth asked for the reason behind this statement. The bystander explained that while Zephyr was skillfully blocking and evading every attack with seemingly divine reflexes, the issue was that a considerable amount of time had already elapsed. According to the bystander, it should be around this time Zephyr noticed a change in the way the big guy attacked. The reason behind this change became apparent. While the red field was being maintained, everyone else became stronger as time passed. Caught off guard, Zephyr was unable to react in time, as Sahaku sneakily launched a swift attack, and causing damage to his back. Sahaku laughed triumphantly and declared that playtime was over. He taunted Zephyr, suggesting that he should have quietly begged for his life from the very beginning, and accepted imprisonment. Sahaku promised to make Zephyr regret the decision he had made. Sahaku once again prepared to unleash his swift attacks on Zephyr. Utilizing the acceleration skill, he demonstrated an exceptional speed that surpassed the perception of an ordinary man, making his movements impossible to follow. Sahaku taunted Zephyr, questioning whether he could even see anything amid Sahaku's lightning-fast strikes. Zephyr suffered damage from Sahaku's relentless assault. Sahaku boasted that all his abilities had increased by 80%, leaving Zephyr helpless against his overwhelming speed. Laughing, Sahaku declared that Zephyr would die as he faced the harsh reality of his fate. However, to Sahaku's surprise, despite his confidence in his speed, Zephyr unleashed a massive attack. Swinging both hands from above, he struck Sahaku directly on the back of his head, causing him to faint and immediately collapse to the ground. The impact of Zephyr's powerful strike was so intense that the ground shook upon Sahaku's impact. Zephyr then questioned his enemies about the lack of teamwork while delivering knee strikes to Sahaku's face. Sahaku was bewildered, unable to understand why his increased speed and defense were ineffective against Zephyr. He continued to speak, explaining that the reason the big guys couldn't do anything was because Sahaku was darting around like a fly. If Sahaku wanted to boast about his speed, he should have partnered with a more reliable tank. The big guy attempted to pull Zephyr with his strength, but Zephyr stood firm, asking why the big guy was fooling around at a distance instead of utilizing his massive body as a tank. Zephyr questioned if he was simply afraid of close-range combat. In Zephyr's past life, if his subordinates had managed their teams in such a way, he would have taught them a lesson on the basics of using magic and buffs. Zephyr overpoweringly controlled the big guy's strength, and gaining full control of his weapon and used it on delivering a powerful blow. The bystanders, including their leader Goth, were left speechless and shocked by what they had witnessed. Sahaku, lying on the ground, mustered the strength to ask Zephyr about his true identity. In response, Zephyr sarcastically remarked that Sahaku had made it seem like he was going to ask some impressive questions and question if that was the only thing Sahaku had in mind. Zephyr then decided to leave, stating that, unfortunately, Sahaku had no right to hear the answer. Meanwhile, someone was watching them through a window. His actions are displaying clear signs of worry in the thoughts of this individual. He couldn't believe that they send someone for him,